Welcome to World Talks. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. We begin this morning with growing concerns over foreign interference in democratic elections. A recent cyber attack on the IT systems of Civic Platform, Poland's largest party in the ruling coalition, has raised red flags in Warsaw, with Prime Minister Donald Tusk warning that the country's electoral process may already be under threat, this just weeks before voters head to the polls. But now, with suspicions pointing to Russia and fresh off similar incidents in neighboring countries, questions are now swirling around hybrid threats and election security. And joining me now live on World Talks to break this all down is Paulina Piasecka, Director of the Terrorism Research Center, Collegium Civitas. As a specialist in the field of hybrid warfare, international terrorism, and information warfare, Paulina brings valuable insight to our discussion. Paulina, welcome to World Talks. Thanks for being with us here this morning.
Welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here.
So let me ask you straight up with the first news, a cyber attack on the IT systems of Civic Platform, has raised concerns about foreign interference, and this ahead of the country's high-stakes presidential election. Tusk took to Platform X and wrote, I quote, "Cyber attack on the platform's IT system. Foreign interference in the elections has begun." My question to you, Paulina, is do we really have reason to believe that Russia may be seeking to meddle in Polish elections?
Well, taking into account the fact that we are a frontline country, that we are neighboring with Ukraine that has been aggressively attacked over 3 years ago, and from our stability and the stability of the country and also its whole organizational sort of subsystem, from transportation through political stability and social stability, it wouldn't surprise me if Russia was seeking to influence Polish elections and the stability within the country.
Tell me, what is, just before I head on to the rest, what is Poland? Can you tell us a little bit of how is Poland actually preparing to counter the possibility of Russia or any other foreign entity meddling in the upcoming elections?
Well, actually, it's the systemic effort that started actually way back after the NIS directive from the European Union was adopted in 2016. Since 2018, Poland has at its disposal the law on the national cybersecurity system, and we are building those systemic responses, not only organizing the sectoral defenses in the form of military, governmental or public CERTs or CERTs, so the computer response teams and computer response incidents. We are also attempting to raise the awareness not only in the area of the cyber attacks that are directed at computer systems and computer networks, but also in the area of disinformation and misinformation, which is actually quite an important, if not the most important, in the electoral times, dimensions of potential attack.
In December, Romania's constitutional court voided a presidential ballot in which far-right candidate Călin Georgescu earned quite a surprising victory amid suspicions again that Russia was behind it, that instigated a fake viral social media campaign to swing the vote in his favor, right? The reports that were going around were saying that fake likes were being made on TikTok and were used to boost Georgescu's Russian candidate kind of views and profile. How dangerous would you say that this kind of digital manipulation in today's age, and could Poland face similar tactics?
I'm almost sure that it is facing similar tactics. We need to remember that it's not only around the elections and electoral processes that things like that are happening. We were witnessing attacks in the informational sphere. Also during the COVID times, we were witnessing information campaigns aimed at polarizing the Polish security during the last years. Especially after the beginning of the Russian aggression in Ukraine and the rise of narratives that were typically headed by the phrase, "It's not our war." It's not like we are expecting the Russian operations to start in Poland. We are expecting their level to be raised rather than start. We have been the informational battlefield since at least 2016.
Paulina, I want to take you back just a couple of years behind. Now, in August 2023, the city of Rzeszów in Poland experienced an outbreak that was called Legionnaire's disease. It resulted in 14 deaths, over 150 confirmed cases. Now, authorities suspected that Legionella bacteria entered the municipal water supply, which actually led to the infections. But now, what's important to note here is that Rzeszów was actually a hub right at the border there for military and humanitarian aid that was crossed to Ukraine. And this outbreak prompted concerns about potential sabotage, although no full evidence supported this theory. And also, the prosecutor's office on Friday said it opened an investigation into the failure of a water treatment plant in Otwock. And as a result, the residents of Otwock have been unable to use tap water for drinking purposes since last Wednesday. My question to you, Paulina, is how can authorities actually differentiate between accidental incidents and actually deliberate acts of hybrid warfare in cases like water contamination, environmental disasters? And I mean, is in any way, could this be part of a broader hybrid operation meant to undermine trust in local authorities?
Well, there is no way to directly answer the question, mainly because of the fact that the answer depends to a huge extent on the investigative efforts of the services that are dedicated to learning the truth and proving the truth about what was at the root of the contamination. But what we can do is actually try to extrapolate from the data that we have at hand whether or not it's even possible that it was the accidental contamination. And let me just tell you, taking into account that it's not only the potable water, it's not only for consumption purposes that the authorities warned the inhabitants against. It's said directly in those communications that they should not be using water not only to drink it, but even to wash themselves with this water, even after having boiled it. And this extent of contamination, taking into account the fact that there are systems upon systems, there are redundancies built into the water clarification, purification system, my bet, and I would bet quite a lot of money on it, would be that this is no accident. And those accidents, quote unquote, happen closer and closer to the strategically important and targets of high visibility, including the near surroundings of Warsaw.
Paulina, you know, it's something very, very interesting that you just pointed out. But now with that, I ask you this, how do we actually differentiate on whether or not it's an accident or not? And I mean, without spreading, of course, panic or misinformation to citizens.
We don't. We are not in a position to make any differentiations. It's for the security services of the state to look for the information and to look for the proof. And only after the thorough investigation and maybe even proceedings on the level of criminal trial that we will be able to really state whether or not it was an attack or just an accident. And this is also important. The approach of us just making decisions and putting the blame on somebody, this is not a good state of mind for anybody, not the decision makers, not the citizens. We, even though it's difficult, we need to trust the process and trust the system. That there are people who are engaged in protecting the country and then in potentially catching and punishing those who harm its citizens.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, Paulina, and tell you, I mean, you're saying, you know, trust the system. This is quite difficult words for many citizens of not just Poland, but any country to believe in. I mean, let's talk about hybrid fatigue, right? How do we avoid it, particularly when the public becomes sort of desensitized and stops taking these threats seriously just because of the frequency or ambiguity? How do we deal with that?
Well, actually, it's about the communication in countries like Poland, the countries that have a lot of heritage from the socialist system, from the deep distrust. We need to remember that, especially in countries like Poland, with this inheritance, of not only the socialist Soviet influence during the last 50 years of the People's Republic of Poland, but also over 120 years of partitions. It's extremely difficult to instill any sort of mutual respect and trust towards the state and its authorities. And there is an art and the hard work to be put into building this system of trust and system of communication, both ways communication. And what goes into it is not only for the services and the state to prove that it can be trusted, it's also about creating the proper level of awareness and proper level of just being able to understand that we all of us are the part of the security system, unless we wanted to live in the highly policed countries, which means that we can either be a part of the reconnaissance system, the early warning system, and just look around ourselves and communicate with the services. There are almost 40 million of us. That's 40 million pairs of years of eyes, and this is an immense asset in recognizing the potential threats. Otherwise, we will sort of decide by avoiding this responsibility that the country will be building more and more complicated electronic reconnaissance system. So it is about communication, and it is about the trust, and it is about awareness that it's not really depending either on us or on our governments. It's the hostile actors outside of the borders of the Republic of Poland who put us into this situation of necessary carefulness and necessary just being vigilant, the necessity of being vigilant on the everyday basis.
And just to my final question to you, if you can just go a little bit into more detail, though. I mean, you've mentioned that, but what role do you think that those security services that you've been talking about, but also the media, right? The media here plays a big, definitely a big part in it. What role should they play in keeping the public alert without actually stroking unnecessary fear, and also, of course, particularly before elections?
Well, this is definitely about balance, the balancing between creating fear, creating the state of panic, and then at the same time being a credible partner in communications with citizens. This is extremely difficult, but I've heard once a retired Washington Post journalist saying that one of the primary responsibilities of state security services is being a credible partner in their communication with media, because the media will trust to an extent, and then if they're not fed the credible information from the services, then they will look for the outside sources. And so it's about being as open as possible to the extent where it doesn't directly hurt or harm in any way the ongoing security operations. And then on the other hand, being on the long-term basis somebody who plays this role, this part, when it comes especially to the state, of providing the security that on the individual level is simply impossible to attain. We won't, as individual citizens, be able to have our own security services, to our own armies, our own border protections. And this is the role of the state, and the state should be credible not only in doing those things, but also communicating those things.
Thank you so much, Paulina Piasecka, Director, Terrorism Research Center at Collegium Civitas, for all your insights this morning.
Thank you very much.
And that's all for this edition of World Talks. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.